would help keep RAGBRAI a popular event. The club began its second decade with a grand total of $568 in its treasury, a modest sum to be sure. But cycling was gaining popularity nationwide, membership was growing, and the future was bright for the QCBC. Now with a well-established identity and organization, the club was in a good position to build on its original objectives and solidify events that would become institutions over the next few years. RAGBRAI saw its second year in 1974, an event that would exceed everyone's expectations in years to come. The QCBC was and remains an important champion of the event. Community service began to emerge as a function of the club. As bike-a-thons became popular fundraising vehicles everywhere, the QCBC was called upon as a resource for organizations like the United Way, the Juvenile Diabetes Association, and the American Cancer Society. The first section of Davenport's Duck Creek Bikeway opened in 1976, and the club worked with the city on the building of an informational center on the new path.
We've provided the funds for the material for the bulletin board on the bike path, and have worked with the city to lay out the bike path.
In 1975, the criterium date was changed to Memorial Day, with the course improved through the work of QCBC volunteers. Jeff and Jackie Bradley became junior national champions, and Jeff won the 1978 Moline Criterium Senior Feature Race. QCBC race team members in the late 70s and early 80s included Jerry Friedman, John Hendricks, Dave McCusick, Byron and David Baxter, Neil Davey, Don Bates Jr., Doug Eppert, Mel Bradley, Butch Bobenmeyer, Peg Bolton, Dan Burns, Jeff Kozad, and many others. In 1978, longtime members Carter LeBeau and Bob Fry suggested and organized a weekend ride to Burlington. They called it TOMROV, Tour of the Mississippi River Valley. Well received in its first year, the event then moved to Dubuque in its second year and remains there today. TOMROV would become the heart and soul of the QCBC. 1978 also saw the birth of the first logo, adding another building block to the club's identity. The early 80s saw increasing popularity of patch rides, spearheaded by Charlie and Sharon Sattler. These family-oriented rides focused on holidays, and riders earned a themed patch for participating. 104 riders attended a Halloween patch ride on Arsenal Island. In fact, bicycling was enjoying a heyday across the U.S. Bicycle sales enjoyed a boost from the introduction of the lively, nimble mountain bike. And the increasing popularity of cycling nationwide was felt here at home with an explosion in membership. By 1981, the QCBC roster totaled 522 members, with an average of 30 people joining each month. The sport's popularity was making a difference in other ways, too. Ground was broken for a BMX racetrack in East Moline. And TOMROV, fast becoming the QCBC's premier event, drew a record 1,000 riders in 1981. TOMROV would continue to grow under the leadership of Susie LaForce, drawing serious cyclists from throughout the region. And as the club approached its 20-year mark in 1983, the League of American Wheelmen listed the Quad Cities Bicycle Club as the 20th largest of its 495 affiliated clubs. The Moline Criterium also continued to grow, from 350 riders in 1981 to 649 in 1988. Prizes grew too, going from $1,800 to over $14,000 in the same time period. Snow fences and porta potties were added to accommodate greatly increased crowds of spectators, and growth continued in spite of rain 5 years in a row. 1983 brought a title sponsor in the form of Stern Beverage. Jeff Bradley took second place that year, squeezing the race in between being on the U.S. Olympic team and racing the Tour de France. Jackie Bradley was also on the U.S. Olympic team in the mid-1980s. Two other criteriums in Moline were promoted by QCBC race organizers John Bolton, A.L. McCusick, and Terry Burke. One of these was televised in its entirety by WQAD-TV. This was likely a first in the country for 1981. As the third decade of the club dawned in 1984, Ronald Reagan was elected to his second term. Beverly Hills Cop was big in the movie theaters, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA topped the charts, and Americans were tuning into The Cosby Show for the first time. The Olympics were held in Los Angeles that year, and more than ever before, fitness was on our minds. The QCBC had spent the first 20 years of its existence developing riding opportunities for its members and the community. Now suddenly, bicycle events were everywhere. Benefit rides, club rides, BMX and mountain bike rides. The public's demand for recreational exercise was booming. In the Quad Cities, cyclists, runners, and nature enthusiasts were placing increasing pressure on city governments to provide facilities for the public to enjoy our natural resources. Civic and business leaders turned to the well-established presence of the Quad Cities Bicycle Club for advice, expertise, and funding. With membership at 640 in 1985, the club was a powerhouse. Organizations as diverse as McDonald's, the League of Women Voters, and various city governments began to seek the cooperation and input of the club for projects, and cycling events were thriving. Ride the River drew 5,000 participants in its first year. The 1986 Criterium drew an estimated 8,000 spectators. By 1988, spectators were estimated at 18,000, and national teams such as 7-Eleven frequently dominated the feature races. Tomrov continued to grow, proving to be not only a premier event, but the financial bedrock of the club. 1987's Ragbri included a contingent of 350 QCBC riders, the largest of any participating club. This period also saw a variety of public service projects, a growing priority. Bill Langan headed up a community project to increase helmet usage, enlisting the aid of local bike shops for discounts and the Quad City Times for advertising. Nearly 700 helmets were distributed. Activities during the Criterium allowed the club to make large donations to the Easter Seal Foundation. A hazard to bicyclists was eliminated through the donation of $5,000 to the city of Davenport for storm sewer covers. In 1991, the club, along with Davenport Community Education, co-sponsored effective cycling classes, offering scholarships toward tuition. Instructors included the QCBC's Charlie Sattler, Fred Blesson, and Don Davis. A stretch of Old Highway 61 near Mount Joy was adopted by the QCBC and kept litter-free. And the club sponsored and participated in many other programs focused on safety. Moline Criterium riders peaked at 649 in 1992. Race production had become so complicated that it often had its own memorable moments. The pace car turned up with a dead battery 2 years in a row, prompting veteran driver Jim Keith to change models in the third year. By 1992, the prize list hit $20,000. As the club's third decade drew to a close, members could see tangible evidence of their impact on the Quad Cities. By 1993, bike paths were either completed or underway all over the Quad Cities and surrounding communities. Cycling had grown to a degree no one could have imagined. And as if to prove the point, Tomrov drew an unprecedented 1,200 riders. In 1994, America was mesmerized by the arrest and trial of O.J. Simpson. Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction were box office smashes. The world said goodbye to an icon in Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And in the world of cycling, the 3 Tour de France victories of Greg LeMond and later Lance Armstrong added fuel to the already blazing surge in bicycling's prestige. In the Quad Cities, the QCBC had evolved into a premier cycling organization. With 890 memberships by 1995, it was also well on its way to national prominence. During this period, changes in events moved toward improvements for participants and spectators. By 1996, the incredible success of the Criterium posed some major challenges for QCBC President Joe Jameson, Criterium Director Terry Burke, and Criterium Treasurer Doug Nelson. The race had outgrown its home in Moline, so QCBC volunteers approached the Development Association of Rock Island about holding the event in the downtown Arts and Entertainment District. A deal was struck, and the Criterium debuted in its new home in 1997. And although the day was one of the coldest, windiest, and wettest on record, the new location proved to be a success. Trinity Medical Center and WQAD-TV signed on as major sponsors the following year, and in 1998, 568 riders and 18,000 spectators enjoyed the enhanced features of the rock